All right, maybe we should turn this on. Let's do it. All right, excellent. To unmute. All right, good morning, everyone. This is Kristen Everdahl, Director of the Mendocino County Cannabis Department. Thanks so much for joining our weekly webinar or public meeting. It is 8:31 and we'll start at 8:35. So I'm just gonna go ahead and mute my phone or my device and let folks log on to the webinar. And then we'll be back with you at 8:35 to get it going. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, this is Kristen Everdahl. I'm the Director of the Mendocino County Cannabis Department. It's 8:34, so we're just gonna finish introductions and get ready to start the webinar for this morning. This is our weekly public meeting held every Friday from 8:30 to 10 a.m. I want to thank Nina Holloway for helping us today and making the stream happen and helping facilitate this meeting and all of our Friday meetings. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. For today's agenda, We'll have a few updates, and then we're going to talk about two main topics. We have posted the Modification Application information page on the website, so we'll review that material. And then we'll talk a little bit about CEQA. Really, this is a short conversation today about CEQA, not minutia rich, but we're going to talk about the difference between county and state rules and the different permit types and how the county interacts versus the state interacts depending on the permit type you might hold in Mendocino County. And just a heads up or a note to everyone, we acknowledge that we've received requests for regular CEQA meetings, and we are working on scheduling that. And hopefully we are in the process of looking into some in-person opportunities for some CEQA support meetings up and coming. So this is just a little bit of clarification about roles, and we will spend time in the future diving deeper and deeper into CEQA to help support applicants in preparing their Appendix Gs and moving forward with annual licenses. And then we'll spend some time at the end, like always, hearing suggestions for future agenda items. Participation in today's meeting. Quick reminder, you all might be sick of hearing it, but there is a Q&A chat feature in the Zoom platform. It's located in your features or your toolbar, and it is a little chat box, and underneath it says Q&A. The toolbar is generally either at the top or the bottom of your screen. If you click on the Q&A icon, it will open up the chat box, which will let you type in your question or comment at any time during this presentation or this meeting today. And just so you know, only panelists, which are Nina and I, will be able to see what you put in as a question or a comment into that chat box. Time will be made for public comment in a multitude of segments today, so 3 segments specifically. If you'd like to make a public comment during those periods of time when that's open, we ask that you'll raise your hand. The raise hand feature is located in the same toolbar as the Q&A chat feature. It's just a little hand symbol. Again, this is generally located at the top or the bottom of your screen. And if you're calling in and you want to make a comment when we get to that point in the meeting, you can use *9 on your phone to raise your hand or to lower your hand. Likewise, if you're calling in, you can use *6 to mute or unmute when we get to the point where we call on you for a comment. And for those of you who are on the Zoom platform, the mute and unmute feature is going to be in the upper right-hand corner of the screen or the box that shows your username and or the individual if you have your camera on. So again, throughout the course of today's meeting, we'll make time for public comment. All right, so updates, some important dates. Not much has changed on here. We're noting that the corrections portal opened on March 28th, and that it's going to close on April 28th. We have noted the weekly public meetings, and I suppose that could have taken off April 1st because it already happened. So there you go. But we'll be having weekly Friday meetings for the rest of the month. On April 19th, April 19th is the last day for public comment to be submitted regarding the Department of Cannabis Control's proposed permanent regulations. So they'll be hosting a public meeting on that day during which you can provide your public comment. If for some reason you prefer to express your public comments verbally as opposed to sending them in via email or snail mail. But all of those options are available for public comment regarding DCC's proposed permanent regulations. And you can find more information on their website, but you can also go to our website and to the 2022 Cannabis Department events page, where we have the April 19th meeting listed, and then you can click through from there if you choose to review the information about making public comment and the April 19th meeting. A couple more updates. Just a reminder, the front counter is open. Folks have been taking advantage of that. Staff is enjoying seeing folks in person. So we're open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we can't take appointments like right at 4 p.m. or after 4 p.m. because we have closing procedures that need to be done before staff can leave. We want to try to get folks out on time. A reminder that we will be closed daily from noon to 1, so staff can take a lunch break. New news, on April 14th, the treasurer tax collector will be sending true-up statements. This will kick off the 15-day appeal period for those of you who want to appeal last year's taxes. And then for equity eligible applicants, once you have your true-up statement, you'll be able to come to the counter during counter hours with your true-up statement to apply for a tax waiver. So we'll try to get more information out about that, but we are prepared to serve both appeal applicants seeking appeal and equity eligible applicants to support them in getting their waiver for their true-up amount before the taxes, the 2021 taxes become delinquent. On February 18th, we'll be opening the applications that were eligible for the corrections portal. So we'll be unlocking all applications that were eligible for the corrections portal so that folks can make additional corrections. So we've received a number of emails expressing concern that folks made error, uploaded the wrong document or the wrong version, or want to double check and fix things in their corrections portal. And because they've submitted it to the department, it's locked them out. So we're really lacking staff time in just opening as folks ask to be open. So what we're going to do is unlock everyone's 30-day corrections portal application, everyone who is eligible, on April 18th. And then they will close automatically as scheduled at 11:59 p.m. on April 28th. So it'll be a good opportunity for everyone to make last minute corrections, final corrections, whatever it may be, starting April 18th. We won't be able to have those unlocked on April 18th till about 9 a.m. Because it's a manual activity. So IT comes in around 7:30, 8 in the morning, and they'll start unlocking things from there. So by 9 a.m., we should have on the 18th, everyone who is eligible for 30-day corrections portal, we should have your applications unlocked so you can make any final corrections you might need to make. Okay, let's talk modifications. So we did put the website up, and I'm going to just kind of go through the slide, and then we'll take a look at the website, and we'll take a look at the application so folks can be familiar with this or get familiar with it, and then we'll take some public comment on this item. So not a huge presentation. Mostly we'll do public comment and discussion on this item today. So modification applications are applied to applicants and annual permit holders. Modification applications must be submitted to the MCD and approved before any of the following changes may be made. So any change in permit size that actually puts you into a new category, right? So if you're going from, say, a large 5,001 to 10,000 square foot permit down to a medium, right? 2,501 square feet to 5,000 square feet, that would require a modification application. Additionally, if you're moving up in size, it would be a modification application. Also, if you are changing permit type, say you're converting from outdoor to mixed light or from mixed light to outdoor, perhaps, right? That would trigger a modification application. If you are reconfiguring your permit premises where you're switching your cultivation area with your nursery area, or an immature plant area is now a flowering area, or like in the next one, you're adding a new permit related structures. And then they're like, oh, I'm adding an F1 building so I can do processing, or was a multi-type and now I'm going to be all mixed lights, so I want to add hoops. Whatever it may be, any of these types of changes would trigger the need for a modification application, as would a change in or addition of a new water source. So if you're going from your well to a pond, or you're putting in a new pond, or you put in a new well, this would also require a modification application if that water source is going to be used for cannabis irrigation purposes. There is more information on the modification application page, and I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go over there now and take a look at it. So on the cannabis page, you'll see that over on the side here, down here, is the modification application, which will pop you over to this page, which just provides additional information about modifications. So modification application requirements, this is further clarified on the application. So this is an example of what may be required, but we've broken it out a little clearer on the application itself, and we'll look at that in just a moment. It is a $733 filing fee for the modification application, which gives us the ability to then review what you've put forward. Once the application and associated fee has been accepted, we'll go ahead and assign it to a planner, and the initial review will get started. Corrections must be submitted, as well as the modification application itself can be submitted via email. And we're going to hold tight to corrections being conducted within 30 days of the date that we send the correction request. And if the department discovers the need for a modification, say we're out on an inspection and we notice that changes have been made that would trigger a modification application, we'll provide the applicant or the permit holder 15 days notice to file the modification materials. And then we'll work with them to get any corrections completed within 30 days of requesting those corrections. So the application itself is on the forms page, and you can link to the forms page from here, or you can link over to the forms page from right here. And here we have at the bottom of the page, the modification application itself. It does, as I mentioned, have more information on it. So we're asking for basic applicant information and cultivation site information, including driving instructions or directions. And then we want your current permit type information, right? So this is very similar or structured in the same way as the application is structured, where you'll check your type or types of cultivation. So it'd be cultivation on one application, nursery could be on a different application. And then unless it's all one piece that's changing, and then you'll put your permit type here and your square footage for each permit type listed. So permit type, square footage of what you currently have going on. And then if you're going to make changes to your permit type, whether it's size or type of cultivation, you'll utilize this section of the form to tell us the new permit type you're seeking and the square footage of that permit type. In addition, if you're making changes to your permit type, your size, or you're moving from outdoor to mixed light or mixed light to indoor or whatever it might be, we'll also be requesting an updated site plan, an updated structures list, an updated employee list, and updated cultivation and operations plan, potentially an updated notice of applicability, especially if folks are expanding. It's possible that expansion is going to change the tier that you're in for your notice of applicability. So you may be required to update your notice of applicability depending on what that notice of applicability says. And then it also will look at whether or not the expansion or permit type change may require an administrative permit or other types of permits, building permits, etc. Water source changes. Water source changes may include any change to a water source used for cannabis irrigation or cannabis-related activities such as processing, and any change to water storage vessels. So if you're adding additional water storage, we will need a modification application because we're going to need an updated site plan and structures list showing those vessels and where they're going to be located. It may require an updated cultivation and operations plan, and it may require updated State Water Resource Control Board, water rights division permitting, updated local permits as applicable. So depending on what you have going on, if you're adding a pond or a well, those do require permits, so we'll be looking for those. And additionally, it is possible that changes to water sources may trigger updates with your DFW Lake and Streambed Alteration Agreement. So we'll work with folks to help sort through that. If you're reconfiguring your site and or adding new structures to your site that are cannabis related, we'll definitely need an updated site plan and structures list, potentially an updated employee list, updated cultivation and operations plan, and we'll be reviewing the proposal for reconfiguration to see if an administrative or other types of permits may be triggered. And then there's a signature area, and then we have some staff use. So we can track some information like, do we need to do another referral? And whether or not permits are needed, and if so, what type of permits may be needed. So that is it for what's on the website. So let me just see if I can go back to the slideshow. My apologies here. Let's see, click on this. So with that said, I think we can go ahead and have some public comment and discussion about the modification applications. We do have a number of questions that came in via the chat, but what we'll do first is we'll go to folks that are on the line. There's a number of hands that have been raised. And because I'm at home today and errored and left my county laptop in my desk in Mendocino, I don't have a timer to put up on the screen. So I'm going to be using a 2-minute timer on my phone. I apologize for any inconvenience that might cause folks. But I just don't have, my Mac is not compatible with the timer that everyone is used to us using. So I'm going to opt for a good old-fashioned phone timer. So as we go to callers for public comment, our first caller will be Paul Hansberry, followed by Hannah Nelson, and then Monique Ramirez. So let's see here. It doesn't look like I have access to mute and unmute people. Can you provide that to me, Nina? And it's my personal email. There we go. Okay. So it looks like, Paul, you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself. And I'll go ahead and start the timer when you start your comment.
Hi, Kristen. Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm just wondering, with your buildings, if I'm replacing a building in kind, say, for instance, I've got a storage shed that's just for tools and stuff, but I'm getting a new one because the old one's falling down. Do I need to report that, especially if it's under 120 square feet and does not require a permit? And the same for tank storage. Say I'm getting rain catchment and it's under 5,000 square feet and does not require a permit, or not 5,000 square, 5,000 gallons and does not require a permit. And thirdly, is this fee of $733, is that applicable to the fee waivers for the equity grants? That's all I got.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I'm going to go ahead and mute you and I'll respond to your questions. Okay, let me manage the timer here so it doesn't buzz us. I have this. Okay. Okay, so replacing a building in kind that doesn't require permitting, so a shed for a shed, No, I would say that that could be exempt from a modification program or application if it's going in the same place. So if you were eliminating a shed, say that's used for agriculture chemical storage and or your admin hold, and it's in one place on your site plan and you're putting a new shed in and it's moving to a new place on your site plan, then the fact that it's being reconfigured would trigger a modification. But if it's just a non-permitted structure being replaced by a new non-permitted structure that's being used for the same type of activities, I think that would not trigger a modification. Rain catchment, adding rain catchment tanks would trigger a modification application because we would need updated structures list showing the number of tanks. We would need updated site plans showing where those tanks are and the volume of them. So that would trigger a modification. And yes, the modification fee is eligible for a waiver under the equity program. Okay, so let's see here. We're just doing a little housekeeping. Our next caller will be Hannah Nelson, followed by Monique Ramirez, and then Julia Carrera. So let's see here. Hannah, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and start your comments.
Thank you. Good morning. I have a couple of preliminary questions about the issues that you covered before this topic, before the modification. One is, you mentioned that equity eligible applicants can bring their true up in. Are those applicants that have already received their eligibility letter? And also, what else would they need to bring with the true up in order to do the fee waiver? The next question is, if somebody submitted after the unlocking or hasn't submitted yet after 4/18, and they make a mistake, will it be unlocked for them at the end of that time as well? And then on the modification issues, how long will it take to get approval, since these things require pre-approval and these are, after all, farms that need to, kind of adapt to the conditions? Could you also give an example of some things that would not be a reconfiguration, like if you're changing your ag chemical storage, but it's the same little shed that you're moving around or whatever? Next, you mentioned updated LSA and water board documents, but in some instances, MCD has the correct information, and it's been just discovered that the LSA, let's say the person who had assisted the applicant had entered the wrong APN number, or the county had changed the APN number, but none of the actual water sources or projects under the LSA or the NOA had changed. Would that require a modification?
All right, sorry about that. That was time. Let me turn the timer off. I'm going to go ahead and answer as many of these questions as I can. So if you are wanting to utilize the waiver program, the equity waiver program, to receive a waiver for your cannabis business taxes, you would have to have been deemed eligible. So yes, you would have to have been certified as equity eligible in order to take advantage of that waiver program. So you would want to bring your certification letter with you, if you can, to the counter. You'll definitely want your ID. So if you don't have that certification letter, and regardless of whether or not you do, we can verify that you are the individual who is certified. And then you'll want to bring your true up tax statement so that we can process that waiver for you. The waivers for taxes will be ongoing, so it's not just for true ups. Equity eligible applicants can use the waiver program if they're making quarterly payments on 2022 taxes, right? And so it is ongoing. It's not just temporary for these true-ups, but because true-ups are right around the corner, so to speak, I wanted to make sure folks know that they can bring their true-up that they receive in their mail, their ID, and their eligibility letter to the counter during counter hours, and we can process a waiver for that true-up amount. Portal unlocking, we will not be extending the portal past April 28th. So when we unlock everyone's applications on April 18th, I would suggest if you are concerned that you may need additional time or you may need to go back and change something, just to not do the final submission because the portal, all of the portal applications that are open come 11:59 p.m. on April 28th, those will be closed automatically and by informational services or informational services. And then they will be packaged into folders, so to speak, and sent to the cannabis department to start reviewing. It is really challenging for staff and takes quite a bit of staff time, both on the MCD side and the IS side, to popcorn, open and close and open and close, which is why we're doing a bulk opening on the 18th for folks. So there's no problem in just leaving your application unsubmitted. It will automatically lock and be submitted at 11:59 p.m. on the 28th, which should give everyone an opportunity to make changes. Modification approval timeline. I think that the modification approval timeline is going to vary to some extent based on the complexity of the modification that's being proposed, right? So if your modification is triggering additional permits, such as, an administrative permit, it may take longer to process that with the applicant than if it's a pretty simple, I'm taking my hoops down and moving to outdoor, right? That's going to be much easier to process than, say, going from outdoor mixed light into indoor. So we do anticipate being able to get through these fairly quickly, especially if we receive complete application materials. And again, your modification is not triggering additional permits. Questions about updating documents with regarding the LSAA and the water boards. This might not be a common occurrence. I think we kind of don't know what to expect as far as modifications are concerned currently. But if you're, say, using a new surface water diversion, for example, it will trigger an update to the Lake and Stream Alteration Agreement. If you are drilling a new well or perhaps expanding, right? If you're drilling a new well, we'll be looking for well permits and well completion logs. If you're expanding your cultivation site, it may very well change the tier you're in for your NOA. So those updates, it would trigger those types of updates. Okay, let's go ahead and move to the next caller. Our next caller is going to be Monique Ramirez, followed by Julia Carrera, and then Frank Wilker. So let's see here. Monique, you should be able to go ahead and unmute and start your comments.
Thank you, Kristen. Good morning. Really appreciate this opportunity to ask questions. So you touched on some of the things that I was going to ask, but I want to restate for people that are having water storage tanks possibly be increased, but it's for fire suppression for their homes or just for their property in general, and the water will not be used for the cannabis site. I'm curious if that would trigger a modification. And also, if it does, I'm really concerned about a timeline for being approved because people need to get those water tanks in place and start pumping potentially. And depending on their water source, they may not have a lot of time to do that if it was in a forbearance period. Obviously, that wouldn't apply for groundwater wells, but I'm just really curious how long the county would, take to review something like that. And maybe they could prioritize it since we're about to go into fire season. And also if the county or if the department has developed a fee waiver form for modifications, if you could talk about that for equity. And also if an applicant wanted to use the appeal process for the cultivation taxes, because they did, get impacted by the fire from the August complex or whatever, and they are an equity eligible applicant, if they're able to use the fee waiver to apply that for the appeal fees. And those are my comments. And thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. I'm going to go ahead and respond to those questions. So again, really the reason why a modification application may be triggered for water source changes is when those water sources are utilized for cannabis related activities. So fire suppression for your property would not trigger the need for a modification application. However, when you renew and or update your site plan at any time in the process, we would appreciate those additional tanks, even if they're for fire suppression, to be identified on that site plan so that we know what we're looking at, so to speak, when inspectors show up on site. Waiver forms. So we're really amidst the process of doing everything we can to streamline the heck out of waivers. So there's no need to apply for waivers to elevate impact Mendocino anymore. We are taking over all waivers at the MCD. And so when you file your modification application, if you're bringing it to the counter, perhaps, right, we can go ahead and process the waiver right then and there when you're at the counter. And this has been really efficient and pretty much the easiest way for the department and hopefully the applicant to work the waiver program. It was just too much email back and forth to have applicants ask for a waiver from Elevate, and then the waiver might go to a different department, and then the MCD is like, well, trying to track it down. So we're the hub for all waiver questions is going to be the MCD. And so we'll also be the hub for assisting with the processing of all waivers. We are doing some minor updates to the waiver form that we have. And what the outcome will be is 2 different waiver forms that will get posted on the website. One will be for PBS. And the reason for keeping the PBS form separate is the information that they need in order to estimate the cost of a permit that an equity applicant might want to use a waiver for is very different from the process that MCD and the Department of Ag might have. So there will be the PBS waiver form put up onto the website, and then I'm hoping that we'll be able to complete updates to the MCD and Department of Agriculture waiver form. And so the only Department of Agriculture waiver available under this program is for scale certification, and we are seeing some requests for those, so we'll try to get to those early next week. And we'll put that form up on the website as soon as we complete it with the Department of Ag information on it. And then it will be 1 waiver request per form, and waivers will only be processed, approved and processed or issued, kind of all in one action there, when the applicant is ready to pay the fee, right? So we're not going to be issuing, say, waivers for the next year, right? We're going to be issuing the waiver as the fee is due. So hopefully I answered all of those questions. I have some notes here. And so what I'd like to do now is go to the next caller. So let's see here. Our next caller is going to be Julia Carrera, followed by Frank Wilker. So Julia, you should be able to go ahead. I believe so. Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah. So now you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and start your comment.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you again for having these meetings. And how exciting that we might be meeting in person. That would be fabulous. Those meetings tend to work even better, so I hope it happens. Mike, I have a clarification question on the modification. The modification. If in your files you have the site map that shows proposed structures, it's already on the property diagram and was labeled as proposed, and you're currently going through the permit process, does that require a modification application? And then my other question is, with regards to the LSA modifications, if you're getting an extension for work to be done, does that require a modification application? Thank you again.
All right. Thank you, Julia. Let's see here. Okay, my mouse maybe has low battery, so I apologize. It's a little hokey this morning. Okay, so if you have filed a site plan with us and you have identified proposed structures and you complete those structures and that permitting, so your proposed structures are now existing structures, that is not going to trigger a modification because we've already reviewed and hopefully approved your proposal for those structures. So I don't see how that would trigger a modification, okay? If you are working with Department of Fish and Wildlife and you've completed your lake and stream bed alteration agreement and you have a number of projects that need to be completed in this timeline, right, whatever that timeline is, and you go back to Fish and Wildlife, you say, okay, I need an extension on completing A, B, and C, or X, Y, and Z out of my projects, and they grant you that extension. That's not going to trigger a modification, but we would like the updated lake and stream bed alteration agreement or any updated language, sorry about that, verifying that you did receive or your applicant did receive an extension to be shared with the department so that we can keep that on file. So hopefully I hit those questions according to their context and answered them accordingly. So we'll go to Frank Wilker and then we'll try to hit a few questions that are in the chat, but then we're going to have to move on to CEQA so we have time to answer some of those questions too. So Frank, I'm going to go ahead and give you permission to unmute. So you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and start your comment.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for the opportunity here. I've got 3 questions which are all related to an email exchange that you and I had. So the first one is concerning a zoning permit, or rather a zoning clearance for a property on TPZ, zone TPZ.
We can't hear you. Can you get closer to your microphone, please?
Sure, yeah. It's related to zoning clearance on a property that's on TPZ. It hasn't been expanded since I've been part of the 9.31 program. And in the ordinance chapter.
Oh, Frank, we're having such a hard time hearing you. You keep fading out, and
I don't know what to tell you. I do have my microphone on here. Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay. So I'm trying to find out what you need as proof that I have not expanded so that I qualify for zoning clearance for a permit that's for 5,000 square feet that hasn't changed. In the ordinance, it says for existing cultivation sites in the FL and TPZ zoning districts that were previously enrolled in a permit program pursuant to the county's chapter 9.31 shall be required to obtain a zoning clearance unless the applicant seeks to expand beyond the sites previously cultivated under such permit program. So I'm trying to find out what proof you need that I have not expanded the cultivation site so that I qualify for a zoning clearance for this. Second question is,
we lost you again.
What's that?
Okay, now you're back.
Okay. Second question real quick is about the SUIR from the water board. I have just well water and it's documented I sent you all the documentation, and the water board is saying that I do not need a SWIR for a small water use irrigation permit for the site if I have a well. So I'm wondering why I have to still fill out a SWIR.
Okay.
And I'm realizing I'm out of time, so go ahead.
Yeah, so let me answer both those questions for you to the best of my ability. So regarding the zoning clearance for TPZ and 5,000 square feet, we need to look into that further, and that question is going to have to be a back and forth in email. TPZ is also limited in development size. So I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that there's a limit of 2,500 square feet, and that when you expand beyond 2,500 square feet, or you have an existing cultivation site that's larger than 2,500 square feet on TPZ, that it triggers additional permitting requirements. So the section that you're looking at may very well be overwritten, so to speak, by limitations to cultivation on TPZ. So it will take a little more investigation than what I can do here in person on this call, so to speak. So we can continue that conversation via email. And with the SIUR, if you've already applied to the water boards for an SIUR and they've sent you a document telling you that an SIUR is not needed for your project, that's what we're looking for, is that document, right? So it's a requirement to provide us with the SIUR if it's needed, or a statement from the water board stating that one is not necessary for your project. So it sounds like you probably have that covered, and you can just submit the letter or the memo from the water board stating that your project does not require a small irrigation use registration. And I'll go ahead and I'll continue to watch for your emails so we can kind of sort through that. And I might have to put a planner on it to ask some more questions about whether a zoning clearance may be applicable in some way, or if an administrative permit has been triggered. Okay, we are at 9:17. I had hoped to go to some of the questions in the Q&A. I think we really probably should move forward and have our CEQA discussion and then go back to public comment, just to make sure that we manage time appropriately. So we've been getting a lot of questions about which agency certifies my CEQA documents. And this can be, I think, a little confusing. So I really want to talk about just which agency permit holders might be dealing with regarding their CEQA documents. And in some cases, some of the state reviewers have provided information that's not wholly accurate for folks operating in Mendocino County. So I wanted to address this because we had received some emails with questions over the course of the week regarding CEQA and who's on first and what's on second, so to speak. So CEQA is an acronym for the California Environmental Quality Act, and it's more commonly known as CEQA, the acronym being CEQA. So folks are very familiar with CEQA, probably more so than the entire title of the regulation, which is the California Environmental Quality Act. For folks with cultivation and nursery permits, the County of Mendocino, the cannabis department here, is going to be the agency that's reviewing and certifying your CEQA documents, right? For retail permit holders, processing permit holders, manufacturers, distributors, and distributors does include self-transport distribution. And for those who have lab testing permits, the Department of Cannabis Control is likely to be the agency certifying the CEQA documentation. And there are some exceptions to this. So, for example, if your local permit for retail required a discretionary permit that analyzed your retail application, the county may have put the initial study information into the staff report and completed a CEQA determination, which means you may have the information necessary for your CEQA analysis to upload it as a scientific amendment without having to utilize the Department of Cannabis Control as the reviewing agency. But if your retail, processing, manufacturing, distribution, self-distribution, or lab testing business did not go through a discretionary permit process at the county, then you would be working likely with the Department of Cannabis Control to process your CEQA paperwork. A little more information on that. So why is it broken out this way? So for cultivation and nursery operators, they are all permitted and regulated pursuant to Chapter 10A17. And the county did prepare an initial study and a mitigated negative declaration that covers the environmental impacts or the potential for environmental impacts under Chapter 10A17. So as all of you know, the county went through a lot of back and forth and negotiation with the state on how to align the ministerial permit process with the state's discretionary licensing process that requires project-specific CEQA analysis. So in order to ensure access to annual licenses, the county has agreed to complete and approve Appendix G checklists as verification that each individual site is in compliance with Chapter 10A17, the initial study, and the MND that was crafted for the ordinance. So because we have this agreement, it eliminates the cultivator or nursery operator's ability to utilize the California Department of Cannabis Control as the agency that will certify the CEQA documentation. There are a few instances in Mendocino County where the cultivation permit required a discretionary permit. This is often or most often associated with indoor cultivation, but not always. So we have had a few permits issued for cultivation activities, and in order to get the cultivation permit, it required a discretionary permit from the county. Now, I want to be really as clear as I can about this discretionary permit component in relationship to cultivation. If you had to get a discretionary permit to reduce, say, a setback for your cultivation operation, that is not going to fulfill your CEQA requirement because it only analyzed the impacts associated with the reduction of the setback, not the impacts associated with permitting the cultivation activity itself. So this can be a little confusing, but if you have questions, please do reach out to the cannabis program via email, and we'll try to assist you with understanding which CEQA pathway best serves your needs going forward. Once a permit has been issued by the Cannabis Department and the Appendix G checklist has been approved or certified by the Cannabis Department, the Department of Cannabis Control may rely on the county's determination and then transition the associated provisional license to an annual license. So once we approve the checklist, right, we'll send it back to the applicant with a signature on the last page certifying that the applicant meets the performance standards and compliance standards set forth in Chapter 10A17, the initial study, and the MND. And then it will be the applicant's responsibility to upload that completed and certified Appendix G to their provisional license via scientific amendment. The state and the county believe that this is going to be the most streamlined approach to comply with CEQA for permits issued under Chapter 10A17. And just so folks are aware, this approach is being used by other local jurisdictions as well. And we are seeing folks successfully transition from provisionals to annuals utilizing the checklist process. For folks who have non-cultivation permit types, such as retail, processing, manufacturing, distribution, including self-transport distribution and lab testing. We cannot process an Appendix G checklist for any other, any non-cultivation related permit types. Simple reason for that is Chapter 10A17 doesn't regulate these other permit types. Therefore, the initial study and the mitigated negative declaration does not consider the impacts potentially associated with these other types of activities or projects. So if you are, as I mentioned, a retailer, a processor, a manufacturer, a distributor, or a self-transport distributor, or a lab testing facility, the Department of Cannabis Control will request that the permit holder prepare a project description, and they'll send you a form that they want you to use to create that project description. So they have a form that they'll send to you to have you complete that project description, which you will then submit back to the Department of Cannabis Control. The DCC will be the evaluating agency for that project description, and they will determine if a categorical exemption may be applied or if a higher level of CEQA document is needed, such as a mitigated negative declaration or an environmental impact report. If a higher level of CEQA documentation is needed, the cost to produce that documentation will fall on the applicant, and then that final documentation will be sent back to DCC for evaluation and certification. So two different pathways depending on what type of activity you have going on your facility. And I wanted to make sure that we worked with folks to try to explain those. We did have some back and forth last week with the state about these pathways, as some of the reviewers were telling our cultivators that they could just do a project description directly with Department of Cannabis Control. However, the clarifying statements that came back from DCC was that no, you cannot do that as a cultivator or nursery operator in the county. So hence bringing forward the conversation today, just to make sure that we're trying to cover all bases and help people understand what the next steps look like for their CEQA documentation. So with that said, I think we can go to public comment. We have about 15 minutes, a little more than 15 minutes to discuss this topic. And I know Julia Carrera has had her hand raised for a while, so she'll be the first individual we hear from, and then we'll go to Michael Katz. You can also ask questions about other items, but we will be doing a deeper dive on CEQA, especially the checklist, in future meetings. So I don't know that I'm prepared to necessarily answer minutia-rich checklist questions, but definitely have some discussion about roles. So we will go to Julia Carrera, followed by Michael Katz, and then followed by Hannah Nelson. So Julia, you should be able to go ahead and unmute and start your comment.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you for the CEQA overview. I'm going back to my original question because it wasn't answered. If you could please ask my respond to my specific question regarding modification application. In the diagram, the structures are listed as proposed on the site plan. The building application is in process, but the building has not been built yet because the building permit isn't issued yet. Does this require a modification application?
Is that it for your questions, Julia?
That's it.
Okay, so I have pretty much the same answer, and I apologize. So if your site plan that you submitted to the department has a proposed structure and you haven't pulled the permits, but then you pull the permits and you build the building, do you need to submit a modification? And I would say no, unless you're building the building in a different location than what was identified on your site plan, or the building is being built in a different dimension or scale than what you proposed to the department in your site plan. So no, I don't think that needs a modification application because we have that structure identified as a proposed structure on your site plan. But if you build it in a different way or in a different location, yes, it would trigger a modification. And then once you've completed the building, it would be really great to send us a site plan that shows that that's no longer proposed, that it's existing. But again, just sending us the same site plan with the transition from proposed to existing is not going to trigger a modification unless that building is in a different location or for a different purpose or for a completely different shape or size or scope, so to speak. So hopefully that clarifies it. Okay. Next caller is going to be, and I apologize, I'm messing with my phone a bit here, is going to be Michael Katz. Michael, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your phone or your device and start your comments.
Well, yes, thanks a lot. I wanted to ask some questions about the earlier items, specifically related to corrections. The state had updated their response to correction time from 30 days to 90 days. So I'm wondering why the decision has been made to maintain 30 days. And I also wanted to know, especially given the drought, there's been a lot of talk about the need for people to put in additional water storage options, but the process that you have just laid out is sounds very complicated, long, and expensive. And so I know that the Drought Task Force has been talking about ways to streamline these sorts of things, and I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for that process to be streamlined given the current drought situation. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, why 30 days and not 90 days? 30 days has been pretty traditional with the exception of a few places where we're requiring turnaround of 15 days. And we don't base our correction timelines on the state's correction timelines. So I don't anticipate us changing to 90 days. I also don't think that we have enough time between now and the transition from provisional to annuals that need to start really happening on June 30th of 2023 to afford everyone 90 days for corrections. We're up against a pretty short timeline, which has all of us quite concerned. Why modifications for additional water storage, and whether or not we can streamline that process. We could potentially prioritize water storage modifications, but I don't think we'll be eliminating the need for modifications for additional water storage and or water sources. It's really quite important that the department understand what the water sources are for that cultivation site or nursery operation, how and where the water is stored, and to ensure that folks are utilizing legal water sources. So with that said, let's see here. We are going to go to our next caller, which will be Hannah Nelson. So Hannah, you should be able to unmute your device and start your comments.
Okay, I'm going to zip through them, a few on the CEQA, a few on the prior topic. With respect to what I call full administrative permits, meaning complete review and referrals to resource agencies, would the addition of a project description and the submission of the administrative permit that was issued along with the cultivation permit be sufficient to submit to DCC for transition to an annual? Will DCC accept the checklist that BCC used to have for addition of small additional structures and a few other exemptions, along with project description in their form for things like distributor transport only? Finally, on CEQA, how would Laird's bill, in your opinion, change these processes? And then quickly going back to some of the modification, can you go back over the 15 days versus 30 days? That was a little bit confusing about 15 days notice, but then
Mhm.
There is, and one more thing is if an application hasn't yet been reviewed, how could a modification be considered like a re-review, which warrants a whole separate fee? So those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. So let's see here. I want to turn the timer off. My apologies. Okay. Couple things. So full administrative permit. So an administrative permit is a discretionary permit in the county. And I think if that administrative permit is in relationship to the ability to cultivate or have the nursery operation, then a CEQA determination was likely made along with the approval of that administrative permit. There should be a staff report. The staff report should have the information in it. In most cases, that's somewhat analogous to an initial study. As I mentioned earlier, we have had a few folks who mostly what we've seen is for indoor operations that required an administrative or a use permit of some sort that analyzed the impacts of that cultivation operation at that location be adequate for transition from a provisional to an annual. But the discretionary permit would have to analyze the impacts of the project as a whole, not just the impact, say, of reducing a setback or eliminating the need for a legal dwelling, so to speak. So those have worked, and I don't know for sure, I can't provide you clarity around whether or not DCC or in the past CDFA has required additional project description information. I just don't know the details of that, and I apologize. Will the DCC accept the checklist with an updated project description for something like self-transport distribution? No, we can't use the checklist for anything other than cultivation and nursery operations. But what I've seen is the form that the DCC put forward looks to me to be an updated version and rebranded version of the Bureau of Cannabis Control's project description forms that they were using for distributors, retailers, and lab facilities previously before the merger. So I believe if you're a self-transport distributor, or any of these other non-cultivation permit holders, that the form that you can expect from the Department of Cannabis Control is going to look very similar to what, Hannah, you might be familiar with from the days of the Bureau of Cannabis Control. And then it just has various questions, like it's going to ask you about the surrounding zoning and then around aesthetics of the facility and so on and so forth. So it appears to be pretty much the same form as what the Bureau used to use. I have not done a deep dive on Lairdsville, so I am going to punt on that question, and hopefully we can have some more conversation about it down the road, but I'm not prepared to respond to that question today. On the modification application questions about 15 days versus 30 days. So the 15-day timeline is if we are, say, out on a site inspection and notice that you've reconfigured, expanded, changed from outdoor to mixed light, or conducted some other change to your cultivation site that would trigger a modification, we'll give you 15 days to get us those materials and that application in so that we can process that modification retroactively, so to speak. And then if corrections are needed while we're processing it, we're going to send people a 30-day corrections notice to, give us additional information about the site plan or the structures list or the building permits or whatever it might be, right? So just trying to be upfront about the timelines that when we ask for a correction will be 15 days, or will be 30 days, my apology. But if, someone doesn't file the modification and then we discover it, we're going to ask for that filing to be conducted in 15 days of us discovering the need for a modification filing. Now, last question, if the applicant hasn't been reviewed, how the heck can a modification application be processed, required, or expected by the department. So right now, we put a heck of a lot of time into trying to get people to a place where they have complete applications, whether that was the corrections letter process in 2020 or the portal process in 2021. What we're seeing is a heck of a lot of folks are like, oh, I completed my application through the portal and now I want to change a bunch of stuff in my application. I want to no longer be mixed light. I want to be outdoor. I want to now go from 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. Those are going to trigger a modification because what we've reviewed and what we have on file is a different configuration, permit size, or permit type than what we reviewed and determined to be a complete application. So for folks who are currently completing their applications through the portal, you can make those changes in your corrections. But for folks who have completed their application and we've done that review and we've determined that you're in good standing or that you have a complete application, if you're changing, your size, your cultivation type, you're reconfiguring, you're adding buildings, it's going to trigger a modification. So we have one more caller, and then I do want to try to hit some of the questions that are in the chat. We have like 33 open questions in the chat that we haven't gotten to. So I have a caller identified as FHF. I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak. So you should be able to, it looks like it might be Frank Wilker. So Frank, you should be able to unmute your device and start your comment. Or there's...
Hi again. I just have one more question about generators, actually. So could you clarify if I have to declare a generator if it is not used for the cultivation? And if so, can you reference where it says so in the ordinance? Thank you.
Yeah, so generators, that's a good question. And so if the generator is used at any time during the year for cultivation, even if that generator is, say, for backup purposes, so if your primary power source is, say, a solar system, but you have a generator that's a backup for that solar system or a backup for your grid system, and you would need to declare that generator. If your generator is on an isolated system that's just for your residential use, you do not need to declare it for your cultivation. So I hope that that helps to clarify. So I still have a caller with their hand raised. Caller is identified on our screen by the letters FHF. I apologize, we skipped you, caller, but I have allowed you to talk. So caller identified as FHF, you should be able to unmute your device and start your comment.
Yes, hello. I am in the position of, I have a phase 1 permit that was it's active, and then we had to resubmit through the portal, and it's been submitted and accepted, but I'm kind of in the gray area of, I'm not sure where it's at now. What do farmers do if they're kind of in that gray area? They can't really proceed with anything else until then. Can you clarify that, please?
Yeah, so if for some reason you submitted an application through the portal and you did not receive a checklist or a notification clarifying what the status of your application is, I really recommend sending an email to cannabisprogram@mendocinocounty.org asking for an update on the status of the application you submitted through the portal, and do it please sooner than later. Make sure you include your AG number or AG numbers so that staff can look it up and let you know whether it's in the complete folder or the incomplete folder, and if it's in the incomplete folder, if you should be making corrections during this correction period. Folks who have been determined to be complete, unfortunately, you're a little bit in a holding pattern until we can start reviewing applications that were considered in good standing and complete. You can start to prepare your checklist materials, but they cannot be submitted to the department until the permit has been issued. We are really pressing hard to get our a request for qualifications out so that we can hire contract staff to assist department staff with processing applications. The county as a whole is severely understaffed in a multitude of departments. So it's been taking us a while to have the other departments complete the processing of the RFQ. But man, fingers crossed we'll get that baby out next week so we can really get some staff in place to assist us with doing the reviews. And we are also looking at how to potentially kind of break apart the reviews so that planner tech staff that's coming on board with the department can assist our seasoned planners with helping move through the reviews in a more timely manner. So I apologize that that's not a real definitive response. But at this point, I think I want to try to hit a couple of questions and go ahead and then move to future agenda items. So if you're an equity applicant, can you pay 2022 minimum county cannabis taxes with a fee waiver? Yeah, you can. You can, if you're filing quarterly and you want to pay your quarterly filings or your quarterly payments using a fee waiver for 2022, you can absolutely do that. And we would ask you to email us so we can figure out how to get that statement for a quarterly filing from the TTC so you can come to the counter and we can process it into a waiver. Why does a new well require a $733 modification fee? We put a modification fee in place for the modifications that we thought needed to be noted and the time that it might take us to process said modifications. And really a lot of this spurred from previous conversations from permit holders who really felt that it was somewhat unfair to have, I think it was around an $1,800 renewal fee when folks were renewing and had no changes to their site. So we dropped the renewal fee down to $733. And then based on the time we had heard from our planners to review and address modifications that had been made, the fees came out to be the same. So that is that one. How long from submission of a modification application to receive approval? Again, it's really going to depend on the complexity of the modification you file. Simple modifications may be approved sooner. And I think what we can do too, as we're looking at being in a water crisis this year and knowing that the timeline for filling tanks, we can make sure that modifications for changes to water sources and storage vessels can be prioritized. Let's see, we discussed this one already. Oh, okay, so good to know. We have some changes to make on the modification application. I'll make sure staff knows that the APN field and the directions field are not active or fillable. And then we'll make sure that we get that adjusted today and reposted. So thanks for that update. I thought I could type in there, but maybe it was just because of the platform I was on. If the premises is reconfigured to correct issues identified by MCD during the application process before the permit is issued, is a modification application required? I think if you're under review and we're saying, hey, this looks like it's in a streamside management area and you're going to need to move it. I'm not 100% sure how to respond to this because there may be different situations. If you have to eliminate the use of an area of a garden, I guess I'm not sure because I'm not sure what the extent of the situation is. So it'd probably be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So I apologize for not having a real definitive answer there. Okay, we talked about that one too. Yeah, we talked about that one too. If someone is ineligible for the portal due to vegetation modification, do they remain in good standing for the purposes of renewing their state license? So if you were determined to be ineligible for the corrections portal for any reason, right? So maybe you didn't respond to the need to submit during the initial portal, so you have an ineligible status. The state does have those statuses, so you're not necessarily in good standing. It shows that you have an open application that was ineligible for corrections. The state will contact us if someone is listed on our application list as ineligible before saying no to renewing a provisional license. And then we will have to assess whether or not to provide local authorization in those instances. You do not need to file a modification application for each new employee you hire. You can just provide us with the updated employee list. The new employees' government issued identification card will need a photocopy of their valid government issued identification card and Mendocino County Sheriff's Office live scan. So we only have 10 minutes left. So I apologize for not getting to all the questions. I know we'll probably hear about future agenda items and the need to answer these questions. We are looking at some additional formats to have public meetings, including some in-person meetings that would have planners available and the ability for us to address permit or application specific questions more efficiently than we can in this forum. So we're doing the research right now to see about dates and how we might do that. And then we'll keep you all updated. Nina, was I seeing you want to raise your hand and ask a question? Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure. So what I'd like to do now is spend the last, we got 9 minutes, hearing suggestions for future agenda items. So it looks like Julia Carrera has her hand raised, and then if other folks would like to make suggestions, please do. And if we don't have other suggestions for future agenda items, we'll go back to trying to answer some of the questions in the Q&A feature. So Julia, you should be able to unmute your device and provide future agenda items for consideration.
Thank you, Kristen. And thank you again for making CEQA on a regular meeting agenda. Really appreciate that. I really think it's important that you work with the community on a mission statement. And so I am recommending a mission statement for future agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And our next speaker will be Michael Katz, and I don't have anyone in the queue currently after Michael, so I'm not going to announce anyone, but Michael, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and start your comment.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, I'd like to echo Julia's comment, and I'm just curious, there's been, 6, 10 of these meetings, and that has been brought up every time, and it has yet to be addressed. So I'm just wondering if there is a specific concern about that or some reason why it wouldn't be addressed, but I think that would certainly be a good agenda item. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for both of those. If folks would like to raise your hand to provide suggestions for future agenda items, please do. We have Monique Ramirez is going to be our next commenter. And Monique, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device.
Yeah, just because the portal is still happening, I would love to just circle back around with more portal questions specific to documents that people are trying to figure out and just nuanced questions that people have. It'd be nice to kind of circle back around that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Monique. Okay, let's see if I can, and we have another caller, Paul Hansberry. I'm going to go ahead and allow you to make a comment, and then we'll be followed by, oh goodness, I really apologize if I say this name incorrectly, Gerasimos, Christopheratos. I apologize. So you'll be after Paul. So Paul, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and leave a comment, please. Start your comment.
Yes, I wanted to echo what the previous callers were. A mission statement would certainly give a lot of guidance to a lot of people as to how things are moving, and it might even help the department, and identify, their path and steer the ship a little bit better, so it stays on course. Also, I wanted to find out about the if someone wants to just start trimming their cannabis, their flowers outside, it doesn't require a building permit, and they just want to move to processing around a picnic table outside or under a little pop-up for shade. Does that trigger a modification, or do you care about that? Thank you very much.
All right, that's a great question. I think that it's definitely going to be a change to the cultivation and operations plan. And so at minimum, we would need a cultivation and operations plan. The tricky thing about answering Paul's question specifically is that if the taking on of processing means that you're going to be having employees and you haven't previously had employees, you're not going to be able to conduct that processing in ag exempt structure. So you would have to potentially do a modification to show where you're building or where you plan to build an F1 structure. But I think if it's just owner operated activity and you've had other businesses, licensed businesses process your cannabis and you're like, oh my gosh, now there's a lack of processors, which seems to really be a concern right now, is that there's a lot of folks who had processed last year that are no longer processing, my apologies, for outside entities. I think ask us the question if you don't know if it's going to trigger a modification, and we'll work with you. But if you're an owner operator and you're like, holy cow, I now need to conduct more processing on site, but you're not reconfiguring anything, it should be okay. But again, please do email us and ask the questions so we can assist you with making sure that you can maintain compliance and not get yourself in a pickle, so to speak. So next, and I think probably our last comment, as we're at 9:57, and I know I probably said your name incorrectly, and I really apologize, but Gerasimos, you are up next, and you should be able to unmute your device.
Hello, Kristen. Thank you so much. And my name is Gerasimos Christopheratos. You actually got it fairly close, and I didn't take that personal. Thank you for trying. So my comment doesn't have to do with a future agenda item. I kind of just wanted to bring this to your attention. And I don't know if you've heard of this issue before, but I was trying to use the Google Calendar link that was sent out to us through my calendar app, which I accept. And it's worked in the past. I remember one other time there was an issue, but when I click on the Zoom link or try to get on the phone link, it was telling me that I couldn't access the meeting today. So I don't know I think there was an update that was sent, but I'm not sure if there's a way to correct that. Again, I don't know if anyone else was having that issue, but I had that issue this morning.
All right. Well, thank you so much for telling us about that. I know that theoretically, right, it should be the same link for every meeting. And then it can be confusing too, because we've been sharing the YouTube link, which doesn't let you join the meeting as a participant or an attendee. It really is just a view only setting, but forward. And also, if folks don't know where to find the information, you can go to our website. I apologize for all the scrolling my screen here. But on our website, let's see here. Sorry, I have a little bit of slow internet. Oh my goodness. Let's see, there we go. Down here on the bottom on this 2022 Cannabis Department events page, each meeting's link should appear. So Zoom meeting link and the One Tap mobile. So you have a couple different places to access it. I know on a Mac, this looks like it's cut off, but if you're on a Mac, I noticed today there's this handy dandy little slider if you need more information. It doesn't do this on a PC, but it does on my Mac for some reason. So couple different places you can find the information. So I apologize if occasionally the links don't match up, but make sure that what you're clicking is the Zoom link and not the YouTube link if you want to participate as an attendee. Okay, with that said, I think we should go ahead and adjourn today's meeting. It's 10 a.m. and we all have to jump onto other calls, but we appreciate you all joining us today and every Friday. So we've had great attendance and really appreciate the participation. And we wish you all a good weekend.